Hey folks, Alan Saunders joined by Mike Vakovcan for our latest episode of Pitt Panther Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And Mike, we've got plenty to talk about here. The Pitt football team is wrapping up its 2020 season. They've got one more game against Georgia Tech next Thursday, but for us that cover college recruiting, the season is really just getting into the full swing of things with the first of two national signing periods opening up later this month. And Pat Narduzzi and company have been busy. 3 commitments in the last week to bring Pitt's total in the class of 2021 to 23 players. And the last one might be the biggest one, as 4-star Virginia defensive end Naquan Brown committed to Pitt after decommitting from LSU, committing to Pitt on Friday. Mike, this is a huge get for the Panthers, right? I mean, one of the most impactful players in this entire class. And anytime you're getting a player that was even considering LSU, let alone had been committed to LSU, that's got to be a good thing for Pitt.
Yeah, while the fan base in this town might have reasons to be upset with the coaching staff and Pat Narduzzi for what they've seen on the field this year, there could be no complaints about the job they've done recruiting, and this momentum has gone on now for a couple of years. Up to number 19 now. The potential that they've gotten the last couple of years at defensive line, we know that's where Pitt's defense goes from. They're really, really, really strong there. And that's an understatement. When you're pulling in 4-star guys, Deion Hayes last year, you got 3 guys this year, depending on what position Brown plays at. And I don't think they're out totally with George Rooks yet. We're waiting to talk to Brown to see what position. He's sort of a tweener, a hybrid guy as far as his build goes. He's only 210 to 215 pounds, which leads you to believe that he could possibly play linebacker, which means they could possibly take another defensive end. But if he does play defensive end, man, you got him, you got Johnson, you got Elliott Donald, you got Dorian Ford, you got, and then you're not even talking about the guys that are returning or that they've already signed and we don't even know, like Emmanuel Belgrave and Sam Williams, and you have John Moore. They're really loaded up front. I think their linebackers are strong, but this is a very exciting class. While what they've done on the field might not have excited anybody or maybe caused some frustration, their coaching staff and recruiting coordinators and stuff have done a bang-up job as far as landing big prospects this year.
Yeah, I mean, Pitt has been worse on the field than they've been this year in the past, under Pat Narduzzi even. Yeah. I'm not sure I've seen the popular sentiment for the team as low as it's been since the season kind of went off the rails in the month of October. To me, that really says a lot about this coaching staff's ability to kind of fight through the noise and keep recruiting out there to land these 3 recruits late in the cycle, especially a big recruit like this. And there's a couple different ways you can go into the offseason with momentum. I think every football team wants to go in the offseason with the momentum of having a good season, right? You want to be, 8 or 9 wins. You want to win your bowl game. You want to have a national ranking, a number next to your name at the end of the year. But having a really good recruiting class is a different kind of momentum. And yeah, Pitt's season kind of went sideways a little bit, but they still have that recruiting class. And to me, there's nothing that makes for better job security for a head coach when you can point to the recruiting rankings and say, I've got the best class Pitt's ever had coming right now since they started keeping track of these things. To me, that's a pretty significant thing.
Yeah, and if fans are honest with, or at least I'm thinking, if you give me the option of having a top 20 recruiting class or having a recruiting class in the 30s, high 30s or 40s, and having 8 wins as opposed to maybe 6, I'll take the 6 wins for a year and take a top 20 recruiting class, entrusting my evaluation of these players that things will turn around here. And this is not just this year either. This is last year. I'm looking at some of the guys that we haven't seen from last year, or they haven't played yet really. You're talking Henningham, Solomon DeShields. We haven't really seen that much of Rashad Battle. Same with
Deion Hayes.
Deion Hayes, Jalen Barton. Pitt is very, at least on paper, and some of the glimpses we've seen some of these young players. They're graduating some players, but they really seem as though they have some real talent in their pipeline.
And I think they've also established that, particularly at defensive line, they've been able to translate, whether it's been high recruits or low recruits, they've been able to develop those players into solid college players and solid pros, especially since they got Charlie Partridge in the fold. So I think it means a little bit more when you get a defensive line recruit that's highly rated. There's a faith there. There should be a faith there anyway, that Pitt's going to be able to turn these guys into the stars that they might be. I think if Pitt Pitt's had some 4-star quarterbacks, and frankly, they haven't worked out for them, right? I mean, Thomas McVitie was a 4-star quarterback, and them not being able to play and transferred. And they've got 2 4-star quarterbacks that backed up Kenny Pickett this year. Neither of them really stepped up into that role the way you'd hope. But on the defensive line, they turned 2 stars into stars with Patrick Jones and Rashard Weaver. Now imagine what Charlie Partridge is going to do with Dayon Hayes, Elliott Donald, Naquan Brown, Nakai Johnson, plus John Morgan, Haba Baldonado, Kalijah Cansey, all the good returning players they already have. This could be the most talented defensive line in the conference, and that's including Clemson and Notre Dame.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to mention. I hate doing that and not mentioning a couple of the other, because we've seen Desmond Alexander. He's a guy that didn't come here as a big recruit, quote big recruit, and he's been a pretty good guy that filled in at defensive end, especially since they used with the rotation they use. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody like Belgrave comes in, or Sam Williams from last year or 2 years ago, whichever class he was in, and they come in and have a role. That's just the way Partridge looks for a guy that fits what he likes to do. And if he thinks he's good enough, I'm going to trust Charlie Partridge over a 2 or 3 star. If he thinks he could be a good player. And I think and from what we've seen at linebacker this season, I'm excited about the linebackers that are returning as well. Pitt's losing a lot of players on the defensive line or on the defense in general, but I'm not going to enter next season worried about what they have on defense. I think they have enough. I think this is all going to come down to, can they fix things on offense? Because I think the talent that they have returning and the talent that they're bringing in especially over the last 2 recruiting classes, this defense will be just fine.
Yeah, and like you said about the players that are under recruited, Haba Baldonado didn't have a Power 5 offer until after the December signing period. In his year, Pitt takes him. Michigan State offered him. I think someone else as well, maybe Syracuse. But I think he only had 3 or 4 Power 5 offers. Servassier Dennis had no Power 5 offers, and Pitt walked into his school in January and ended up with what appears to be a really good player. Yeah, I think you have to trust the coaching staff on defense when they take a low-rated player. And then I think you can get really excited about the coaching staff on defense when they take a high player, because I think there should be that trust that they're going to be able to turn him into that kind of star player. Yeah, Pitt's, they're losing Paris Ford. They didn't have Jalen Twyman this year. They're going to lose Weaver. They're going to lose Jones. But I agree. They might get Damari Mathis back. There's a ton of talent on that defense still.
Keyshawn Camp's coming back next year.
Camp's supposed to be coming back, and
see if he could stay healthy. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if somehow they reach into the transfer portal and possibly bring in another defensive player. We'll see if they use these last 2 scholarships. But, I know they've been in touch with some guys over the last week to month that have entered. It seems as though every day kids are transferring out of their programs. And I know a couple guys in particular that Pitt has been in touch with. We'll see if that leads to anything. And these guys have played on Power 5 programs. So and these guys have played, so they can come in and play right away. It's not as though they're going to have to redshirt anything. So I don't think we're done with that aspect either. So I'm real high in the offense. They just have to the defense. They got to figure out who their quarterback's going to be next year, and what they're going to do in the backfield, because they obviously, what we see at wide receiver, they have the weapons at the wide receiver that can get it done. It's just a matter of, are they going to have a quarterback and get them the ball, and a quarterback that can stand upright from the offensive line, protecting them.
Yeah, I think those are the big questions this offseason, and I think the coaching of those positions is certainly up in the air. I don't know if Mark Whipple and some of those offensive assistants are going to be back. I would lean towards thinking that he won't be, just based on the results this year, but we shall see. And I think that may change things about some of this class as well. There's always an opportunity for that to be changed, but I don't think the defensive staff is going anywhere. And I think the defense being the sort of bedrock of this class, those 4 players we talked about on the defensive line are the top 4 rated players in this class. So I think even if they have some coaching turnover, which might be good, sometimes you take the good with the bad when you turn over the coaching staff. Maybe you lose a recruit or two to make an upgrade, but I think they'll be able to weather that. And let's talk at least a little bit about the job Chris Beatty has done recruiting, especially in the state of Virginia for Pitt. This is now the 4th recruit from the state of Virginia. And to me, I think all of them are impact players. They all had multiple high major offers. Miles Alston, a wide receiver, is a teammate of Naquan Brown's, and then 2 running backs, Rodney Hammond and Malik Newton. To me, it's just incredible. That's not a place Pitt has had a ton of recruiting success in the past, and Beatty has in really his first full cycle at Pitt turned it into a strength.
Yeah, sometimes it takes 1 or 2 times. Let's remember, this is Pat Narduzzi. This was his first head coaching job, and I don't think it's hard to or harsh to say that he probably didn't do a real great job with his original coaching staff, but he got a mulligan, and he's cashed in. The job Archie Collins has done in multiple states, Chris Beatty, and Corey Sanders. I think he is a very underrated guy on the staff. He brought him in as the safeties coach, and he's just a good, quiet guy that gets the job done. But those first 2 guys we mentioned, they hit home runs, man. They're approaching the Charlie Partridge, if they're not already there, the Charlie Partridge level as far as recruiting and the impact they have with getting high level. They're not just getting recruits; they're winning recruiting battles against big boys, and that's something Pitt hasn't done. If they've done it, it hasn't been much over the last 6-7 years. Now, I'm going to have something on this a little bit later tonight. Is a majority, you could maybe count, I don't know, maybe 4 guys in this recruiting class that Pitt hasn't beat out some serious Power 5 programs to land, which is a pat on the back to those coaches. And as you mentioned, a lot of these guys are tied to the guys like Beatty and Collins.
Yeah, I think the recruiting of the staff has gone way up with the additions they've made. Partridge, Collins, Beatty, Sanders. Sanders involved in a lot of those local guys, the 3 local defensive linemen in the class, and as well as safety Stephon Hall.
Alan, I had a question for you because somebody sent me a text message and asked me this, and I'm curious I wasn't sure how I felt about this. And if you, hypothetical here, this is, I don't have any intel on this that says this is.
On the spot. All
right. Which way would you rather lean? We know Kenny Pickett won't be returning next year. If Pitt has a chance to bring in a grad transfer quarterback, would you go that route or try to develop one of your 2 4-star guys and finally develop a quarterback? Or would you possibly, if the opportunity presented itself, take a grad transfer that's leaving a program?
Well, I think we're in line for another weird spring, right? I don't expect the COVID situation to be taken care of in time for spring football. And so I don't know how much of a spring we're going to get. I don't know if the players are going to be able to practice or not, or how much they're going to be able to practice. And so I think a lot of it comes down to who the offensive coordinator is. I think if Mark Whipple's coming back, it makes a lot of sense to lean on the guys that are already familiar with his system and not try to bring a guy in and kind of jam him through in what might be another weird offseason. I think if you look around the country right now, I think a lot of teams that tried to replace quarterbacks had a tough go of it this year. And so to me, if Whipple's coming back, it makes a lot of sense. There's talent in those guys. I know they didn't show it this year necessarily on the field, but they were highly rated recruits for a reason. There's talent in guys like Bevel and Yellen. I think Nick Patty's really underrated too. I think he can play. I think he's shown it when he's been given the opportunity to do it on the field. And so I think there's certainly enough talent in that quarterback room to get you through a season, without it being a disaster. But if you're going to change the coordinator, then why not look outside the organization? You're probably going to lose at least one of those guys if you do make a change of coordinator, maybe more than one of them.
Yeah.
Because Whipple recruited, two of those three guys. And so, I think if you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator, why not find out what kind of system he runs and then go find a quarterback that you think is the best suited to run that kind of system. Maybe you're going to bring in a guy that wants a more mobile quarterback, and he's going to look at Davis Bevel and be like, I'm in love. This is it. This is the guy I want. Or maybe not. I don't know. But I think, if you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator, give him the freedom to make that decision. And if you're going to keep Mark Whipple, I think you go with those three guys. I think there's enough talent there that somebody can step up and win that job and do a good job of it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I was torn on it, but I think what you just said there makes a lot of sense as far as the offensive coordinator and familiarity. And the other thing that the one thing as far as the three recruits this week, I'm just keeping an eye on this because it looks as though on paper they just seem to have a lot of offensive linemen in this class, and I don't know that. And what are they? They're losing. They're going to lose two at least through graduation. We'll see what else happens after that. They just seem to have a lot of offensive linemen, and I didn't totally. This is nothing against the players. I just didn't get both of those, Gavin Bartholomew and Kyle Fugetti. He obviously Fugetti's the tackle, and then I guess the other guy is Trey Anderson. We don't know yet. I reached out to him, and he told me that as of right now, a couple days ago, his position at Pitt is yet to be determined as far as whether he is a tackle or a tight end. On the recruiting list, he's listed as a tight end, but he could play tackle. So you're talking about bringing in, if he's an offensive lineman, that's six offensive linemen there. That's
well, I mean, I think if we can talk frankly for a moment, the offensive line was pretty bad this year, and they weren't great last year at a lot of things. I think, to me, really, I mean, the offensive line has been pretty poor at run blocking for 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And I think we saw when Kenny Pickett was out and they had a quarterback with a lot less mobility in there and Joey Yellen, that some of their pass blocking shortfalls have been covered up by the fact that they had an experienced quarterback that with a lot of mobility that knew how to move around in the pocket and kind of escape guys. When you put an inexperienced guy without that mobility back there, he got killed too. I think in those 2 games where Joey Yellen was a starting quarterback, I don't think the offensive line was good at anything. So why not bring in 6 guys, right? I mean, if you don't feel like you have the guys to get it done in your room, then you go outside. And yeah, they have 3 seniors. I think at least one of them's probably going to come back, but those are free scholarships. So they don't have to worry about the limit for those seniors that come back to put them over the limit. And so if they have room in this class, I think that's an all hands on deck approach. I mean, you obviously aren't going to play 6 freshmen at once, probably aren't going to play 6 freshmen at all, but I just think it's a position that needs an injection of talent. And it's also a position that's really hard to evaluate at the high school level at times. You're often seeing guys do one thing on the field and you're trying to project their talent and their body type to doing something completely different at the next level. And so you miss a lot. I mean, there's 4-star offensive linemen that never play a game in college football all the time. And there's Jimmy Morrissey was a walk-on. He's going to be a 3 straight time all ACC player. And so I think that's a position I do think it makes a lot of sense to kind of cast a broad net and just get as many guys as you can and hope that enough of them work out that you end up with a quality unit out of it. To
Yeah.
me, definitely outside of what they're going to do with the starting quarterback position, that is the second biggest issue going into this offseason for the Panthers.
Yep. And so they have 23 commitments. Theoretically, they could bring in two more. I would expect that one of those would be a defensive back, whether that be safety, cornerback. And then after that, if they do decide to go with a max of 25 players, I think it's, to borrow a phrase we hear in the NFL draft, the best available player. I think be the highest rated player. I don't think many positions are off that. I don't know that they're going to take a running back, but talented guy decommits or something at wide receiver, or any position on defense, it wouldn't shock me. But I think
Probably not taking a seventh lineman. We can probably we can probably say that.
Yeah, and quarterback. Those might be the only two. Other than that, or who knows with quarterback? Like I said, I don't know. We shall see. And the other thing we have to also remember is between next week, I think next week it'll start, is Pitt, fortunately, unlike some of these other programs, haven't seen a lot of guys entering the transfer portal. I talked to my actually earlier today, somebody that keeps an eye on that transfer portal. He told me nobody from Pitt was in there. So, but you just never know in today's football. Once the season officially ends on next Thursday, who knows that might not see a path to the field and might want to have a better opportunity next season, especially with the free scholarship year. So while we think they have certain positions covered, you just never know as far as who might want to pick up and play elsewhere for next year or for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that you're going to see with Pitt and elsewhere. And I think that's maybe a good reason that you might hold those last two scholarships and take a look and see who ends up in the portal here and around the country. I also think, given the fact that this class of 2021 has not yet been to their campus that they're going to be signing to, they've not met any of their coaches face to face for the most part. I also think you could see a large rash of decommitments, or maybe a lot of recruits that don't sign in December, a lot more than we've seen in the past in these next couple weeks. And so there could still be some movement around the country in this class, I think, as well.
Yeah, as far as I know, the only guy, I'm trying to look at their list here real quick. I think the only guy that's standing out to me right now, I haven't talked to Naquan Brown yet to find out his situation, but the only guy that I remember, and he's the only guy that I would, as far as being on commitment lookouts, whether or not he commits or not, is Khalil Anderson from Atlanta, Georgia. I don't want to start any rumor that he's not going to sign. He doesn't really give a firm answer on. And he's a guy that it wouldn't be surprising. It's been rumored that some programs like Georgia or Clemson might jump in late. If that happens, kid down in Georgia, you get an offer from Georgia or Clemson. While he says he's committed, who knows? Right now, my last message or conversation with him, he said he was committed to Pitt, but he also said that he will not be signing in December. So that's going to lead to two or three.
Watch, and it would not surprise me if there are one or two of those.
Yeah.
In Pitt's class, and a lot really around the country as we move forward. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, it was a good week for that, and let's see if we can talk to Mr. Brown, and we'll figure out how they're going to fill out these last two spots. But I agree with you. I think last year, for the most part, they had everything wrapped up in December and only needed to fill out, I believe, Rashad Battle, or maybe I believe they only took one or two late commitments in February.
That's one of the late ones too, I think.
Yeah, Battle and the kicker, Ben Sauls.
Okay.
Those were the only two guys, I'm just looking at the list now, that were brought in after December, after the December sign period. So they're on pace. If this all works out, they had 2 scholarships to give last year. They didn't use the max last year, but right now they have 2 scholarships that can be used, and they have currently the Rivals 19th ranked recruiting class in the country.
Big stuff in the recruiting world. National Signing Day coming up the week before Christmas. Of course, Pitt football finishing its season next Thursday night, 7 p.m. kickoff. 7 or 7:30? Now I'm questioning myself.
7, I believe.
I think it's 7. I think I was right the first time. 7 p.m. kickoff down in Atlanta, and we'll have our Atlanta-based correspondent Alan Cole at that one covering for Pittsburgh Sports Now. And then, of course, we'll be figuring out what's happening with the bowl season and staying in touch with Jeff Gapel's team as the Panthers continue their non-conference schedule. Tomorrow, I'll be at the Pete for Pitt and Northern Illinois. For Mike Kovcan, I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching Pittsburgh Sports Live. Go ahead and click that subscribe button so you get a notification every time one of our player coach videos or Pitt Panther Talk or Pittsburgh Postgame, any of our shows goes live. You will be the first to know. Again, I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching and have a great night.